Okay, the time is now 1:30, and again, we'd like to thank everyone for their time today. Hopefully you're at the right place. You should be at the webinar, The 3 Myths of Third-Party Insurance Data, hosted by Systems Consulting Services Incorporated, or SCSI. And today, you're going to be hearing the voices of 3 people. First and foremost, I wanted to introduce our CEO and co-founder, Ken Wayman. For almost 35 years, Ken has been working with financial institutions and insurance carriers in order to help them find solutions to fit some of their largest pain points and the largest issues, and been successfully doing that. And for anything related to externally sourced information or risk management, Ken is most definitely your man, and there's very few people that are as knowledgeable about him in those areas currently in this space. For just as long, our vice president and also co-founder, Ann Ostrom, has been involved similarly with helping large financial institutions and insurance carriers find solutions as well. An interesting fact about Ann is that for some time, she spent in her career as an NSA crypto mathematician. And in her own words, she mentions that that sounds a lot more glamorous than it actually is. But in any case, she brings a lot of experience, a lot of varied and interesting experience to our customers. And then finally, myself, Ken Schmid, I lead our account management and sales efforts here at SCSI, and I've been part of the team since late 2017. Before then, I worked with various technology firms, everywhere from large firms such as Oracle to startups, working with financial institutions and insurance carriers across various items and various solutions that they were looking for in order to help them save time, save money, and become more efficient in the process. Now, by the end of this presentation, our bold promise is this. We promise you that you will be able to know and understand better how you can reduce your underwriting data infrastructure costs, how you can mitigate your third-party vendor loss of service when that does in fact happen, and all this at the same time increase both customer and agent or agency satisfaction without having to perform costly upgrades and migrations, as maybe you might think up until now. Now, you might be asking yourselves, who is SCSI, and how do they have this type of experience? And for that, I'd like to turn the time over to our Vice President and co-founder, Ann Ostrom.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today. I wanted to tell you something about our company, Systems Consulting Services. We started our company over 30 years ago and started as exactly what our name says, doing systems consulting work. During that time, we did an interface with Dun & Bradstreet and connected with commercial data and its uses primarily in the financial world. We gradually realized that the insurance industry and personal lines, along with commercial lines, was a really interesting and very needy kind of place, in that it needed to be able to get to multiple multiple vendors of data. And now we support something like 11,000 users and over 20 locations. And one of the things you'll see later is that we now connect with, I believe it's about 50 different products from very diverse vendors of information. During those years, we have identified some fallacies in the insurance industry that have continued to this day. And those are basically myths about the whole insurance industry. And Ken Schmid is going to lead you through what those are and some of our answers for that.
Thank you for that, Ann. So we're going to cover 3 myths today that are actually quite common within the industry, and myths that before we started working with our clients and customers, that they were under the impression they just had to live with and had to deal with. So our first myth is this, that you need separate data and technologies to support connections with each of your third-party data providers. One of our clients is actually a large, well-known insurer in the Northeast, mainly involved in property and casualty insurance. Prior to meeting with us, they were supporting an infrastructure with 9 different third-party data vendors. Each one of those had to have its own individual integration. And on top of that, just to support those 9 integrations, they had to have over 30 different servers and databases just to support the data coming in. They tried to actually create and manage integrations to a new vendor that they were partnering with, but just that integration alone took them over 18 months and over $1.5 million of investment. And even then, they came to find that it didn't quite fit all of their needs. It was at that point that they contacted our company, and through that initial contact, we were able to help them find a solution that allowed them to reduce their integrations and connections from 9 down to 1, and from their 30 servers and databases down to 3. Now, you can only imagine overnight the cost savings that they were able to realize as a result of doing this type of change. But another added benefit is, especially in this day and age with new technologies and new insurance platforms and the buzzword InsurTech being announced in almost every day, it's very challenging for insurance carriers and financial institutions to try to test these new technologies as well as try to implement them in their infrastructure. Oftentimes, it takes an individual testing environment for each and every one of these new technologies that they would like to roll out. So if you can imagine, before our partnership with this carrier, they had to duplicate that infrastructure of 9 different integrations and over 30 different databases and servers. Now, again, down to 1 and 3. And so it makes this client of ours much more nimble and in a much better position to be able to implement new technologies, not just to stay abreast with their competition, but also to give them, in many cases, a tremendous competitive advantage and give their customers the best possible service and the best possible customer satisfaction and some of the highest in the industry. Myth number 2 is that many of our customers, or many before they started working with us, were under the impression that they needed to upgrade their entire infrastructure to be able to connect their years of customer data that they've been collecting with next generation insurance platforms. Now, it's probably the case with many of you on the line that parts of your infrastructure is still what we might consider legacy, which you've just been collecting over the years. It works great. However, with these next generation technologies and next generation platforms that are being rolled out, just the integration alone with these may take several months, if not in some cases many years, to fully roll out, both from an upgrade standpoint on your infrastructure, as well as being able to bring everything together and to integrate. Well, one of our customers, who happens to be a large, well-known insurer in the Midwest, was able to implement a next generation insurance platform in a fraction of the time that they would have otherwise. And they did this by leveraging the jBias, our solution database, to be the repository for all third-party customer data, both the new data that was being brought in, as well as the legacy data that they've been collecting for some time. This allowed them to be able to shortcut and jumpstart the implementation of their Guidewire platform, to be able to save many, many thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in implementation costs and integration costs, and to allow their teams to be able to focus on more mission-critical items with regards to the next generation platform that they were implementing. And what this did in turn, it is increase their customer satisfaction, because they were able to turn around their insurance quotes at an even much faster pace, and also save them, again, many, many dollars in terms of development and money. Now, this might be a good time to stop for some questions. I see that there's a question here. Can we say who these clients are? Unfortunately not. The reason being is that they've asked that we keep their names confidential for the time being. However, if you did in fact decide to pursue a complimentary consultation with us, and of course with our permission, we'd be more than happy to go into more detail on the success that these customers achieve. So thank you for that question. Now, the last myth is that you need a separate and costly solution to be able to identify areas for underwriting data workflow improvement, and to be able to put processes in place for things such as vendor failure. So key pain points that our customers bring up to us is the fact that they're looking for a lighter and more nimble tool to be able to run analyses against this valuable data that they've been collecting and continue to collect on their data through their underwriting quotes. And rather than perhaps implementing a very heavy, and in other words, a very costly business analytics tool, they have asked us to be able to develop and design a lighter version, which would allow them to do things such as identify where a vendor might be stronger in a geographic area or in a zip code with regards to the data that they receive, to be able to identify the percentage of times where upon requesting information or data from a vendor that no data may actually come back. Now this would actually be very valuable when it comes to contract renegotiation time, where instead of your partner coming back and trying to increase their rates, which oftentimes is the case, you can actually have data which shows, you know what, perhaps the level of data or the quality of data that you're providing us isn't as good as you might expect, and here's the data that backs that up. Now, even more importantly is sometimes it's the case where without any warning, the data integrations that you have with your current partners may go down. And when that does happen, you're in a little bit of a situation, you're in a bind. And oftentimes it's the case where if you use the example of a credit score, a insurance carrier might put just a placeholder in. Well, the problem with that is, let's say if the credit score is actually higher than the actual credit score of your potential customer who's requesting this insurance quote. And for that day, they receive the quote, but maybe they make a decision not to actually go ahead and open up a policy using that quote. The following week, they come back. This time, the integration is up and running. They go ahead and put in the request for the insurance quote, but now, of course, the insurance score is lower than that placeholder. And so the insurance quote that's now provided to your customers is much higher, maybe even several times higher than the original quote. And what this leads to is diminished customer satisfaction and probably even a loss of a customer for life. And there's plenty of other products that you might be able to sell to that customer over the lifetime of the relationship that you have with them. And so rather than put yourself in a situation where you open yourself up to risks such as that, built into our solution, we have the ability, because of the integrations that we've already created, to quickly switch from one vendor to another with the built-in integrations that we have. What that allows you to do is, without any loss of service, both to your internal stakeholders as well as your outside agency or agent partners, you'll be able to continue to service them and continue to provide them with accurate quotes, not just with a placeholder, to be able to give their customers and in fact your potential customers the most accurate quotes and the accurate prices for the policies that they're trying to request. And again, overall, long term, it allows our customers and customers such as yourself to be able to realize cost savings as well as the benefits of continued customer satisfaction and additional policies throughout the future. So just a quick recap on the myths that we've covered. Myth number one, you need separate integrations and separate data sources and databases to support the connections with each one of your third-party data providers. That's not necessarily the case, especially with a solution partner like Systems Consulting Services, Inc. Myth number two, you need to upgrade your entire infrastructure, oftentimes that have pieces of it that are supported with legacy technology, just to be able to use the latest insurance platforms and insurtech technologies that are being rolled out. That's not the case either. We've been doing this long enough that we know how to be able to integrate with your legacy data systems and become that bridge between your legacy infrastructure and the new technologies that are coming out without any loss of service and without costly upgrades and implementations. And then finally, you don't need to invest in a very costly business intelligence tool or business analysis tool. You can use a light tool that would be built directly into our solution to be able to run the analysis on the data that you've already been collecting and use this data and analysis to be able to leverage potential cost savings with your partners and also to be able to avoid the pitfalls of potential loss of service from vendor failure and be able to switch very quickly in those times. Now, how do we actually do it? And for that, I'd like to turn the time over to our co-founder, Ken Wayman, to talk a little bit about the technology that underlies jBias. Okay, I think we may be having some technical difficulties with Ken. I will go ahead and speak to this slide here. So what we pride ourselves in is consistent and scalable architecture. All of the consumer data for jBias is stored together in one database. You don't have to worry about having several, many, or multiple databases where you have bits and pieces of data, maybe even based on the vendor, stored in different areas, which then takes up time to be able to consolidate and aggregate so that you can turn around quick underwriting decisions. Our solution, jBias, is robust enough, again, as I mentioned before, to be able to integrate with your legacy systems as well as your next generation platforms. And what this allows you to do is to be able to upgrade at your own pace without feeling rushed or without having to invest money in that type of migration or upgrade, which you could potentially be able to invest in other technologies.
Ken, if I might, one of the things that is truly good about the jBias software is that we provide that database of information for you to actually go back and look at, or for your auditors to be able to go back and look at, so that you can evaluate why you made particular decisions, whether they work really well and you want to follow that through, or whether for some reason something's going wrong and you want to check to find out what's going on. There are ways for you to be able to analyze that database, and it is stored at your site so that you'll be able to get to that information and be able to analyze it.
Thank you for that, Anne. So without going into this slide into too much detail, mentioned before these out-of-the-box integrations that we currently have. Right now, we currently have integrations with over 15 different third-party data vendors and over 50 different reports and counting. And the ability for us to be able to add additional integrations is much shorter than you might imagine, particularly because of the wealth of knowledge and experience that we've gained over the years. Looking briefly at this slide here, if there are any of these reports that you're currently leveraging or utilizing, or even reports that you may be considering in the future and may just have been putting off because of the level of effort that it would have taken to create that integration, again, typically within an environment, we could have data being pulled in from these reports sometimes in the same day, depending on your infrastructure. And so again, if you have these, any of these reports that you're currently accessing, and you're also experiencing, or maybe we're under the impression that you had to live with these myths, I encourage a conversation with myself. I'd be more than happy to be able to set up a brief and free consultation where we can speak in more detail about your current environment, about your current challenges, and how SCSI and jBias can help you with your current challenges and be able to allow you to realize the same benefits that we've been able to help many, many other customers experience as well. Now, also, too, if you just happen to be in the Austin area next week, there's a large conference going on where there will be many, many discussions about the digital future of insurance. We will be there, and if you happen to be in the area or happen to be attending this event, I welcome the opportunity to be able to spend time with you. Perhaps we can go grab a quick bite to eat or meet there on site. And I'd love to speak with you a little bit more about our technology and how we might be able to help you with some of the challenges that you face. So let me open it up again to any questions from anyone on the line here. Doesn't look like there have been any questions that have come up thus far. Okay. Well, we wanted to thank you all for your time. We will be sending up follow-up information, and we will be following up with you with regards to this webinar. This will be available for future download and future reference, and so if you'd like to view this again, I will be sure to send you the link for that as well. And so without further ado, we wanted to, again, thank you all for your time and wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.